In this tutorial, I'm going to talk to you about classes in Python. You can think of classes as blueprints that define new data types. As you know, there are data types like integers, strings, booleans, etc. All the data types you know are very useful, but classes make it so we can model more involved concepts. For example, think about a person. A person is not a dictionary or list, it's something else entirely. We can use classes to define these new types and model real concepts. To define a class, we use the class keyword followed by the name of the class. Classes typically use a different naming convention than variables and functions. In Python, classes don't use snake case like we're used to. Instead of being all lowercase and using underscores, they use the Pascal naming convention, which is like this. As you can see, each word's first letter is capitalized. Just like loops, if statements, and more, we add a colon at the end and then indent all the code inside of the class. Inside this indented code block, we can define all the functions that belong to the class. For example, let's model a human. So modeling a human with a class is a common way to teach classes in programming. Let's just type class human. And now let's define some of the functions that belong to the human class. Let's make a function that will be for moving a human, like walking. So we can do def move, and then we'll type self. I'll go over what self means later in the course. And inside this, we could just do something simple like print I moved. Let's make another function called eat and pass in self as well. And then this time we'll just say I ate. Alright, so that was a very simple example of defining a new type, or defining a class. So with this we can create new objects. In programming, an object is an instance of a class. An instance in Python is an object created from this class blueprint. You can think of a class as a blueprint, and an instance of an individual object is built from this blueprint. In our program, we could create as many humans as we want. To create the object, let's type out the name of the class, and then call it with parentheses, almost as if it was a function. But this just creates the object and then returns it. We have to store this human somewhere. So let's type human1 is equal to a new human. So when we run this, we don't get anything, but that's because we haven't done anything or printed anything. With this new human object, we can type human1 and then a dot. As you can see, the methods we defined earlier, eat and move, both show up in the autocompletion in VS Code. This is just like any other data type, like strings for example. Strings have their own methods like .split and .upper. When we assigned the variable human1, we just created a new human, just like we would create a new string by assigning a variable to a string. We can now call our methods. You may notice that there are other methods in here that start and end with 2 underscores. These are called magic methods, and we'll deal with them later on in the course. For now, we can just call, let's say, the move method from our human object. So when we run this, we get I moved, because we called the move method that was in the human object. So this is just like calling a string .split or .upper or whatever. Now besides the fact that objects can have their own methods, they also have attributes, which are kind of like variables that belong to a particular object. So let's create an attribute. Let's just type the name of the variable. So we'll do human1, and then with a dot, and then type a variable name. Let's type x. This variable belongs to human1, so we could have a different global variable somewhere else in the program that's called x, so we could just say x is equal to 20 or something like that. But human1, its attribute x could be set to 5. Now we can create another one. Human1.age is 23. And now we can just print human1.age, and we get 23. Now here's where objects get useful. Let's create another separate human, human2. Here we created a different object, human2, and set it to a new human. This object is completely different from the first object. If we tried to print this person's age, I'm just going to remove some of this extra code here. Okay, so if we tried to print human2's age, we would get an error, because we didn't create an attribute called age for human2. Human1 and human2 are completely different instances of the human class. Let's set human2's age now. Human2.age is 25. Now when we print it, we get 23 and 25. Alright, that's the end of this section. If you're having some trouble understanding classes, Go back to the start of the section and try to create some of your own classes, and make some of your own methods as well, and just get used to making classes.